The Connection Show, inspiring hope, health, and healing, sponsored by Braveheart Workshops, live with Jill Reynolds. And joining me today is Heather Ruble, and we are at the Branson Film Festival in Branson, Missouri, and Heather is with Unbridled Faith Ministries. Welcome to the show, Heather.
Thank you for having me.
We are so privileged to have you, and so we'd like to begin, Heather, by sharing with you that on the Connection Show, we really believe that the Holy Spirit convicted me that sharing story helps the listener transform their lives, because when Jesus walked the face of the earth, he shared stories, accounts, and parables so for the purpose of transformation. So, if you're willing, I want to ask you if you can go back to your childhood, into being a little girl, Heather, and share the good things and maybe some of your hardships and pains or struggles you went through in life that led you into the amazing woman of God you are today.
Well, I grew up in a very good church. I grew up in a Pentecostal church, so we believed in God's healing power. We believed in, faith and asking and deliverance, and I had a prayer mother that always prayed for me, and looking back now, I just know so many times that she was an elderly lady in our church that just covered me in prayer, and as a little girl, she would just tell me over and over again, I want you to know I'm praying for you every day, and she's gone on to be with Jesus now, but I'm so thankful for those older saints that were in our church that did pray for me, and I was brought up in a godly home. Both my parents attended church. And from there, you just kind of go on and you live life, and you've been told your entire life that God's got a calling on your life, but you kind of don't believe it, or maybe you don't realize what it is, because he never lets his secrets out. He doesn't really tell you exactly what he's got you called for. So I went on to engineering school, and I met my husband then, and we got married, and shortly, just a few years into our marriage, he had a traumatic brain injury. And so that is really the point where the prayers and those prophecies that were spoken and the word of wisdom that was spoken over me, they started to come to life right then and there. And God became real in my life. It wasn't anymore just a story that someone had told me, but I experienced it, and it changed our lives forever.
I'm so sorry that your husband went through it. What was the traumatic brain injury from?
So he got hurt from riding horses. He got bucked off. He experienced 3 bleeds on the brain, and he lost movement in his left side and suffered a lot of cognitive things. His cerebellum was affected, so he lost his balance a lot, and they didn't know the severity of it at the time, and so we weren't sure if he would walk again. We weren't sure if he would be able to even live on his own, and they told me that he would have personality alters because he had also hit the front of it, which is his emotional side. So he said that I sat down with a therapist, and she said, he could become verbally abusive, he could become physically abusive, and none of those things happen because God has the final say, and He is the author and the finisher of our faith, and so God just took what we had, and he only made it better. And so my husband, he is almost 100%. There are a few lingering things, but he's
How long did it take him to get from the injury to where he is today with recovery?
So the recovery, he gained a lot in the beginning. So within 3 to 6 months, he was back to driving, and he could walk, he could dress himself. But it definitely took several years before he is fully recovered. And I believe God's still working on him. He's still putting things back together that the enemy stole. He's still putting things back together and rewiring his brain so that things are better than ever. But he's a teacher at a therapeutic, a young adolescent boys therapeutic treatment facility. He's an educator, and he also pastors a church now. And,
wow.
And we still ride horses.
So he got back on that horse.
Yes.
They say get back on it. Yeah, they say that usually it's with brain injury that whatever develops within the first 12 months is generally the direction, the trajectory. My mother had a brain injury from a car accident when she was only 45. So I remember that first 12 months were very critical.
Yes. Well, and that was one of the things. He wanted to ride horses again. We compete in reining. Unbridled Faith, which is our ministry, it's geared towards horses and cowboys and that culture. But he wanted to ride again. And I said, no. I said, we're getting rid of all the horses. Like, we're not going to do this anymore. And I read that car accidents are actually the #1 contributor to brain injuries. And I thought, God, I trust for him to get in a car every day and go to work and to live his life. So why can't I trust you to keep him safe on a horse? And so he still competes, he still rides. And
wow. And that, I'm sure that's his heartbeat too. I mean, he loves horses.
Yes. It's a big part of our ministry. It's a big part of who we are and what we do.
So share a little bit about what is the ministry and tell us, obviously Unbridled is horses.
Yes.
And so tell us, what does the ministry do and how can people get involved in it, and share a little bit about it?
So we started out, Unbridled Faith, we started out doing cowboy church services at horse shows, rodeos, barrel races, anywhere we would be asked to go that had to do with the equestrian sport, we would go and we would do that. And I soon found out that we didn't have literature to leave people, and we wanted to leave people with the gospel of Christ. And so I wrote a 30-day devotional that's entitled Unbridled Faith. Apparently we're just going to stick with that theme. And it really walks people who have never heard the truth about Jesus. And it uses a lot of our stories, a lot of our farming stories, heartaches, whatever we go through, pointing people to Christ and hopefully leading those to salvation. So we could hand those out, or they are for sale. They're on Amazon, and Barnes & Noble carries them. But we can hand those out at the Cowboy Church. And then we did a music video that recreated his accident, and we were approached after that music video, and they had seen that. We kind of got some friends together, and we recreated him getting hurt, getting bucked off in the hospital. Our friend Cassandra Garten recorded a song, No Longer a Slave to Fear. And then we were approached about doing a reality TV show on our life. So it was during COVID, and I had to twist my husband's arm, but he committed, and we're 2 years in now. We have 1 season done. And
is it called Unbridled Faith?
It's called Unbridled Faith, yeah.
Gotta keep the theme. Gotta keep that theme. There's a purpose for that theme.
Mm-hmm.
And how often do you film for that reality show? How often do you have to be totally transparent?
So I should film every single day, but it does not happen because that requires putting on makeup, and my acting coach and director.
Oh no,
Peggy
no. Real reality is showing up raw.
I tried to tell her that. She's sitting over there right now, but she's always like, "You need your lip color. You have to have your lip color on." Raw. So, but we do film. We try to film every big event. We breed horses, so we just had 2 baby horses born in February, and at midnight we're out there with the camera, and I did not have my lip color on. I was in my pajamas, and we're out there watching the miracle of life with a horse and getting the cameras out there. And so.
Now, do you do any type of equestrian events, like retreats with the horses? Have you done any equestrian?
Well, so we show reining horses. We show in the NRHA, which is National Reining Horse Association. We also breed and show American quarter horses, which are the same. But so we compete in reining, and I got my buckle on. We won year-end award, my horse and I, and so we try to hit those shows up in Oklahoma, Texas, Missouri, Kansas. My husband shows with me. We actually compete against each other.
So how many horses do you guys have now?
Too many. We have 10.
10.
Yeah.
So are they like? Do you have your horses on your own property? So do you have a lot of acreage then in farmland?
We do. Yeah, we have a farm. We have a barn and arena. A lot of times we put our show horses in with our trainer. We have a professional trainer. She gets our horses ready. She coaches us at the show, and she coaches us. We take weekly lessons and stuff. And then we have some brood mares. Those are the ones that are having the babies that we recently just had one, if you like contemporary Christian music. His registered name is Dry Bones Rattling, and we call him Rattle.
I love Dry Bones song.
Right? And so I'm like, I hope that when we run out in the Futurity, which is a big event for 3-year-old horses, that they always play a song. And I'm like, I wonder if Elevation Worship would let me play that song when he runs out.
That's a great song. Well, I asked you if you do any retreats because, Heather, I happen to be also a meeting and a retreat planner, an event planner.
I've never done a retreat.
And I actually did a retreat in September of 2020 in Montana at a horse ranch where the horses are trained to do leadership training. So the attendees got to go into the arena with a horse, and they did different modalities of being able to look at if they are a leader, a follower, and there were all kinds of things to put your own self and identify with the horses, and the horses are so intelligent. In fact, that weekend that I was there, I got that dreaded phone call. My father had been rushed to the hospital, and they didn't know if he was going to make it. And so, of course, my retreatant said, "Oh, Jill, fly home." I said, "No, I'm going to stay." And this one horse who really did, he only liked certain amount of attention. The minute I'd walk into the stable, I walked up to him and stood by his gate, his stall, and he put his little head up to me like this, and he knew, and I started crying and crying, and I started to pet him, and he'd let my tears fall, and then he'd take one big step back. He'd step way back, and then he'd come forward, and he'd be empathetic, and then he'd take a step back. And it was just so amazing to observe the love of horses and what they know and how intuitive they are.
Mm-hmm. Yes, my husband has a very good relationship with his horse Annie, and she's the most famous horse that we own, and she's pure white with blue eyes, and she just takes care of him. It's like she knows he can't hit the ground again because of his brain injury, and she loves him and he loves her, so they've got a very good bond. And she's kind of our trademark, and how we're known for is our white horse with blue eyes.
So we might talk about doing an event with you with the horses. That would be amazing
that would be great.
Some kind of
we've never done one,
a wellness. And my theme is hope, health, and healing. So hope, health, and healing with Unbridled Faith. I can see that
I
now.
would love it.
I can see it now. So a little bit more about your childhood. So, I always love when someone says they've been raised in this unbelievable Christ-centered home. So besides your husband's horrific accident and the struggles you went through there, do you recall as a child growing up in a Christ-centered home, going through any of the wonderful, terrible teens or going into college years where you acted out, and any burdens that you say, this is where the Lord really needed to mold me?
Oh, goodness. The list could probably go on how he could mold me. But I was an only child, and I really had it very, very good. My parents, I really don't know which direction to go with this because there's so many different ways that we could go. But my mother had a terrible childhood, and she was one of 15, was passed around. Make a very long story short, she knew how to be a mother, even though she didn't have one. And to me, that was just incredible. And so I was just very well taken care of. And, just probably I had attitude and a rebellion like most people do. I'm very strong-willed, and I'm very opinionated. But my dad, he had a speech impediment, and so he was full of wisdom, but he never hardly shared it because he had a speech impediment. And then until he got older, and God delivered him of that as well. So he like beat me basically, like, you keep your mouth shut, because I always had an opinion about things, and it wasn't my place always to share it. And so, but when I went to college, I definitely struggled with, got out of school, get away from mom and dad, who was my covering and my protection. I hit depression, and not sure if I was good enough, and just put a lot of pressure, exterior pressures on myself. But no, God is still molding me and making me. It talks about the meek woman, and so wives, be submissive to your husbands. So fortunately, I have a very good husband.
So you did go through that burden of feeling not good enough,
right.
And so with that, and I've done a lot of burden release work with people. So with the not good enough part that would come up, did you struggle then, because it's attached to usually either perfection or body image issues, and sometimes it can lead to substance abuse, sometimes it can lead to acting out in different ways. So how did it manifest, the not good enough, with other parts such as perfectionism or busyness or body image issues that you saw manifest as a result of the not good enough?
So anxiety is huge,
Okay.
and fear, and some of that is hereditary. Some of that's passed down from my mother, which I'm sure her childhood had to do, had a lot to do with that. And she had a pastor come. We were in a revival, and he told her, he said, if you don't get rid of the fear that's in your life, you're going to put that on your daughter. And I'm going to throw my mom under the bus. She won't mind at all, but she never dealt with it. She never got rid of it. And so it's generational. I have to deal with it now, so I have a lot of anxiety. I used to deal a lot with fear. I still have to keep it. The enemy still comes in and attacks. So God can deliver you, but it's still your job to make sure that you are prepared with the whole armor of Christ. And so when Zach had his accident, I had to deal head on with fear at that time, especially getting back on a horse and all of those things. I feel like I got it under the blood, and I feel like I'm delivered of it. However, anxiety still creeps up, and especially just the perfectionist, like trying to live up to a standard that I think people have set on me, but it's probably just me setting it on myself. But that type of stuff all stems definitely from young, and I can throw my mom under the bus and say it.
Well, and it's not even throwing mom under the bus as much as it is. I mean, Scripture says there will be 4 generations of sin.
Oh.
And so when we can address those and spend time with them, I find what happens a lot of times, Heather, with Christians especially, is they get into a place sometimes where a burden arises like fear or anxiety, and they're constantly looking at it, and I'm not discounting the enemy, but they're constantly giving the enemy credit for it instead of saying, well, where did this wound come from?
Human nature.
Well, yeah, and I think the biggest blessing the Lord gave me on this epiphany was, if you think, do you have children, you and your husband?
No.
Okay. So when you have a child, and so you can relate to this because you were a child at one time, and that baby comes out of the womb, if you think about it, it's in this safe little place, and it comes out, and don't you think that part called fear arises the moment it leaves the mother's womb? Now, is that a sin, that fear came into the baby? Or how about abandonment? How about despair? And how about angry when the doctor spanks the baby and it starts crying?
They get their first shot.
So if you think about that, because I think it's a profound thought, are those parts of Satan, or are they parts that manifest? Because even the Bible says, Jesus, it's okay to be angry, just don't let the sun set on your anger. So, is it okay to experience fear? Just don't let fear manifest and control your life. So I take a look at them, and instead of being angry and trying to get rid of them, I embrace them and ask the Lord to show me how to be thankful for the parts that have come into my life, because they've molded me and changed me. And they've served a certain purpose for a certain amount of time.
Absolutely.
For a certain amount of time. And when you hold on to them forever and ever, they're not serving a purpose. But so I embrace them, and then I take them back generationally and ask Jesus to bring in the blessing from that, and then you bring in the generational blessings. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And yes, he says, I've never seen the righteous forsaken nor seed begging for bread. And I'm just so thankful that blessing of God, it was on my parents, because they took a stand to serve the Lord. And when you take a stand to serve the Lord, you can not only receive your own blessings, but those who have gone on before you.
Yeah. Well, I'm just so grateful you came onto the show today. It's just been amazing to get to know you. I really look forward to staying connected with you to talk about some horse retreats, because I think that it brings so much healing. Horses bring so much healing to the soul, Heather. And so thank you so much for joining us today on The Connection Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a blessed day. And if you haven't come out yet, get your tickets. They're all this weekend. Come to the Branson Film Festival at the Copeland Theater on Gretna. There's amazing things going on here. Actors, screenwriters, directors, all kinds of vendors here, and films you can watch the entire weekend. So go to bransonfilmfestival.com and get your tickets today and show up. It's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, April 21st to April 23rd And I'm just going to flash to the flyer right now. This is the flyer so that you can come out and attend. So thanks again for joining us, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining us today on The Connection Show, where we bring you stories that will transform your life. The Connection Show would appreciate your support. Please go to either our Patreon page or our PayPal Me Now link today. We love our podcast show guests and appreciate our listeners and YouTube subscribers. Please go to our YouTube channel called The Connection Show and Braveheart Workshops and subscribe now. Remember to click the gray bell in the All tab so you don't miss any upcoming episodes.